This afternoon, it's my privilege, on behalf of the faculty of the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, to introduce Dr. Phil Tumulty. Phil is an admired colleague with over 50 years of service to American medicine. His career is unique. It begins when American medicine was talking about the art of medicine. It spans across the introduction of science into medicine, and in the process, Phil has a perspective and a career that has left him uniformly acclaimed here as the clinician's clinician, the teacher's teacher, and a physician of renown. Phil, those are well-meant, heartfelt remarks on the part of the faculty.
They mean a lot to me.
And we wanted to know how it is that someone like yourself really began interested in medicine and selected this for a career.
I wanted very badly to become a physician. But the other thing I thought about, being, given the religious background I've given, and also as an area where you could give help and support and, of a personal sort, was the priesthood. I thought seriously of becoming a priest. Mm-hmm. But I couldn't stand the thought of not getting married. I couldn't stand not having married, so priesthood was out. Then another thing I thought about was I love to build things. I like to make things. I love to build and make tree houses and all these kinds of things I used to build. I thought I'd like to be an architect or an engineer. But then when I got in high school and college, I discovered I didn't know any mathematics at all. My mathematics were terrible. So that being an architect and engineer was out. So finally I decided that the thing I wanted to be more than anything else was a physician. So I became one. I thought there was much more to a doctor than science or techniques. I still feel this way keenly. I think that a doctor is much more than a guy who knows the science of medicine or the techniques of medicine. He has to be a broad person. He should know something about philosophy, something about history, something about English, literature, and so forth. He should be a broad person. Because unless you're a broad person, in comes to your office somebody who may or may not have an organic disease. Their problems may be entirely emotional, situational, personal, interpersonal. Or they may have organic disease. You don't know until you get to know them as a person and can evaluate all the historical and physical qualities in their story. You don't know. I want a doctor who's a broad human being, has broad knowledge and broad interest.
Phil, when you applied to medical school, this would be 1935, 36?
1936.
1936.
35, 36.
Right in the midst of the Depression. You remember what it was like then to think about education and higher education and why medicine?
Well, the two schools that I wanted to go to were either Harvard or Johns Hopkins because they were obviously top-notch. I decided I wanted to go to Hopkins, so I came over here.
What happened when you came, Phil?
Well,
what did you really find when you came to medical school?
I would have to say this, that from the time I started medical school here till today, I've been in love with Hopkins. I've been falling in love. I fell in love quickly, and my love's just gone higher and higher. Because there's something about this place, well, it's excellence, number one. There's a reaching out for excellence. I mean, here at Hopkins, we know we're not perfect, we know we're not excellent, but I think everybody in this staff, faculty, nurses, technicians, everybody on this staff, reaches out and tries to be the best. And I quickly got that feeling that everybody there wants the best, and they're reaching for it and striving for it. And that's what I believe in. I believe in that. I believe in that.
Phil, I'm hearing a man who's in medical school, who loves people, loves psychiatry, admires surgery, and yet he goes into a discipline called internal medicine. How did that happen?
Well, I like general internal medicine.
How did that happen?
Because, well, I didn't like psychiatry because I like to deal with human beings, and I like to deal with human problems and personal problems, but it was too much that way, because I like to deal with organic disease, too. So I thought general internal medicine, and then I don't like to do things to people, technically speaking.
Okay.
I like to talk, as you can gather from
Okay.
our conversation today. I like to talk, but I don't like to do things to people. I don't like to shove things in and up and down them. And so I didn't want to go into surgery. So the area where you could deal with human beings and deal with organic disease, but at the same time, interpersonal problems, was the general internal medicine. And that's why I wanted to go into general internal medicine.
And you stayed at Hopkins for the internal
Yeah, I
medicine?
stayed in Hopkins for the whole thing.
Okay.
I was resident for 3 years. But we had no money, no pay,
No salary,
no salary,
no time off.
no time off.
In this program for
Yeah.
3, 4 years.
Yeah, right.
Why did people do it, Phil? Why did you do it?
Because we loved it. We loved it. The team we had was fantastic. The guys on the team, we backed one another up. We all liked each other. We worked like this. And then the instructors we had, the visitors, like Ward Allen, Baker and so on, they're all marvelous. We didn't have any weak sisters at all. And the clinical material was fantastic. And then the students that we worked with were Hopkins students, and they were wonderful too. I mean, it was very, we worked ourselves hard as the dickens, but we were all happy. We all loved it.
It was almost vows of chastity. You couldn't
Yeah.
be married. You were getting
Well, we got
part-time.
married.
How did you get married, and how did you get
We got
what
married.
was the policy towards
My wife and I got married. We had, where do you hear this one? During my residency, we had one child a year for 4 years. So we lived in a little house in McElderry Street, a little fallen down, terrible looking place. It was awful, but we loved it. We loved it, and my wife was fantastic, a wonderful sport.
Phil?
My wife was and is a superb person who can handle any kind of a situation and handle it well.
Do you think that we've gone too far with the technology of medicine? The kind of public outcry
Yeah.
that they
Oh,
really
sure.
want. What,
Well, one of the big changes that's occurred when I was coming along, a doctor was a god. A doctor was like a priest.
Yeah.
He's a great person. And certainly people don't feel that way now.
Right.
People don't feel that way now. And I think the big change that's occurred is doctors don't communicate like they used to. They don't communicate. I mean, I know members of my family go see doctors, and then I say to them, well, Kathy, what did Dr. So-and-so say was wrong with you? Well, he didn't say much at all. He gave me some prescriptions, you know? And obviously she hadn't been indoctrinated. She hadn't been instructed. She hadn't had communication about what's wrong with her and so forth. And that's a shame. And then 40% of all illness that an internist sees is functional in origin. 40%, at least 40% is functional. And you can't take care of functionalness in any way except through conversation, through communication. I've got to get to know you as a person, and I have to develop a relationship with you that's interpersonal. And we have to sit and talk. We have to sit and talk. And I can't just come in and thump you once or twice and stick something up your behind and so forth, and then send you on your way with some prescriptions. Medicine has become too scientific and too technical, and not enough communication, not enough personal, interpersonal. For example, if you read I look at the New England Journal every week, some of the other popular journals, they don't have clinical articles in them anymore. They have article after article, which is highly technical. But do you ever read about the kinds of things we're talking about now, interpersonal, situational problems, and how to handle it? You don't see that stuff. You don't.
the last place I saw that well
Yeah.
done was a
Yeah.
book by Phil Tumulty
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
management of disease.
You just don't see it anymore. I think in medical school and hospitals have got to stress the fact that a doctor, I've said this now so often you're sick of it, but a doctor has to be the following things. He has to be a scientist. He must be a scientist, and a good one. He must be a good technician. But also he must be a communicator. He must be a communicator. He must be able to communicate with people. And then next, he must be a person that plans the patient's management. Man's the patient's man. Management's the big word. Diagnosis is not the big word, and treatment is not the big word. Because you may have a patient, you may have a disease that we can't here and now diagnose, or you may have a disease which we can't here and now treat. But we have to manage it, which means we take care of all aspects of it. We take care of the medical aspects, we take care of the personal, the interpersonal, the social, the financial, and so forth. We take care of all aspects of your disease. That's what a doctor is. And that's the kind of doctors we have to produce.
On behalf of my colleagues here, Phil, thank you for a career that we admire and trust. You will always be our doctor.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate your comments enormously, and I enjoyed being with you so much. Bless you.